the fellowship that we enjoy. Teach us something important about your work in the world. We pray for all of the living creatures that you have created and that you are redeeming. All of this we pray through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
So when I first started talking with Margaret, our pastor, about what I was going to do, we're going to talk about animals and so on, and she is always, so polite and so on. But basically, her question was, "What in the world are you going to say in that class?" So here's what we're going to say, and I'm going to give you the whole message of this class in one sentence. And here it is. What God created, God did so in love. And God sticks with the whole of what God has created, bringing it eventually to everlasting glory. And there is ample evidence of this in the Bible, and I'm going to provide that. I think that's important that we're attentive to that. So this is going to be different. We're not going to be people for the ethical treatment of animals, PETA, in stained glass. We're not going to be the Sea Shepherds or the Sierra Club with some baptismal water sprinkled over it. This is not going to be a detour outside of Christian faith in order so that, because we're concerned about animals, just like our friends in those organizations are. The work that they're doing is usually very productive and may look very similar to the work that we feel ourselves called to do. But the reasons for doing it are fundamentally different. And what happens with what we're going to do is that this is going to direct us into the very core issues of our faith, and which would be the creation, which would be the redemption that we know in Christ, and the consummation, which is the vision for the end times. So for me, getting ready for this was one of the big happy surprises is that this really was a deepening and an energizing of the faith that we already know. So there's going to be a lot of Bible in this. There's going to be a lot of Jesus in this. There's going to be a lot of creation and that kind of thing. So we're going to move into the fundamental major moves of our faith. Now, what I'm going, any thoughts before I switch and do today's presentation? Hal, anything?
I was really glad to read what you had online, because I have all these people that work at the Humane Society, and I'm thinking, why are you spending all your energy doing that? Shouldn't you be helping people? But I think that what I read addressed that.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Jan. Other thoughts? Anything to add, Hal? I hate to call on you, but.
Well, I'm taking notes on every word you say, and I'll be trying, and from that, I'll be trying to shape what I can bring to your course.
Wow.
From my perspective as an anthropologist. That's
wonderful. That's super for us. All right, let's jump over, and always feel free to to jump in whenever you have something to say here. And let's see, I'm going to. All right. Now, do you see that graphic, every living creature?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
With the moose.
With a moose.
Yeah, with a moose.
When we have time, we'll talk about where that moose came from. You might be surprised. Okay. I'd like our conversation to start with this word, the Anthropocene. Anybody know what that means?
It's sort of related to anthropology, so isn't that the study of man?
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
that's
I
right.
like that word a lot.
Yeah.
That's because you know what it is.
I, well, the scene part has to do with major geological periods like the Pleistocene and so on. So the Anthropocene is a new term that relates to this recent period of human domination of the earth and of nature. Am I correct?
Bingo. Well, that's why you're helping with the teaching, Hal. All right.
Hey, I even used the right words, didn't
Boy, you nailed that. You
I?
right on. It's the period during which human activity has been the dominant influence on climate and the environment. That's what we are currently in, and humanity has become such a huge big deal on the earth that it has thrown a lot of things that we would call nature off kilter. And these are extremely important to take care of. So here's how that works, is that there's been a tremendous growth in the world population. Okay, and in 1800, there was a billion people. I gotta move the little square that's got all your pictures in it. The global population has grown from 1 billion in 1800 to 7.9, almost 8 billion today. I mean, what an impact. And in the process, the gross domestic product, and this is a world wide figure. You notice I'm not putting the vertical scale on these. I want to just give a general idea of what's going on. But the gross domestic product has skyrocketed, and look at right around 1950 seems to be a time, and this would all be in my lifetime. Seems to be a time when this really has come to take off, the production of the whole world, and started 1750. Do you know why the chart seems to begin at that year?
Why?
Is that when they started recording? Don't know.
Well, that's a good thought. They may have started recording. A lot of things started in 1750. What do you think, Hal? I mean,
It's the start of the Industrial Revolution.
there you go.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, that's right. So
Yeah.
there was this enhanced capacity to produce stuff. I mean, it just was so energized. And then in 1950, here we really take off. Now our capacity to produce manufactured goods and consumer products and so on has just gone right through the roof. Okay. Look at this. Motor vehicles.
Yeah.
Right during, how could you, I mean, what city, Sarasota, not a major city. We're not talking about Chicago or New York, but Sarasota, we've got traffic going on. So when you have this going on in every major city, that's got to be making a huge impact on, every one of those cars is burning fuel and emitting emissions. We'll talk about that in a minute. But so lots of cars, lots of in addition to burning fuels and so on for other than transportation reasons. Our consumption of fresh water, huge big deal. And again, rocketing up in right around the middle of the 20th century, just shooting right up. We go to now you go to some of the downfalls corresponding with these great, I mean, how do we experience the use of my dad was in the car, was worked for General Motors and in Southern California, and they manufactured all of those cars, and it seemed like, boy, were we ever having a blast, riding on the freeway and in new cars and everything, back when I was a kid. But at the same time, we're losing forest. And so the amount of forest land and then rainforest land is in decline. Surface temperature of the earth. There's another thing. Look at how that goes. That's not quite as smooth. There's actually a decline up until a little after 1900, and then this upward trajectory of the surface temperature of the entire planet. Sometimes it doesn't seem, we live in a hot place. It's always hot in the summer in Florida. But in fact, worldwide, in the last 5 years, I believe I'm correct in saying, and somebody may know better than I do, that we've had record high global temperatures in the last 4 of 5 years. First, second, third, and fourth highest temperatures ever recorded. And now the average rise in temperature globally has been between 1 and 1.2 centigrade, which is a couple of degrees, 2.5 or so degrees Fahrenheit increase. So it has in fact gotten a little bit warmer. Carbon dioxide concentration. I mentioned this, we talked about this when we talked about global warming in general. This class, by the way, I would call global warming 2.0. We did the class a couple of years ago on the warming of the entire planet. And we talked about this at some length, but I'm going to return to it, is that carbon dioxide concentration. In other words, if you have a volume of CO2 or a volume of air, there are a certain number of molecules in that air that are carbon dioxide. And so what that is, it's parts per million. If there always were, up until say about 1750, there were always about 285 parts per million carbon dioxide in the air of the atmosphere around the earth, 285. Then that started going up. And there was a guy by the name of Charles David Keeling, 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 who was working for the Scripps Institute of Oceanography back in the 1950s. And Keeling was instrumental in getting the carbon dioxide concentration to be measured, and they started measuring the numbers of molecules of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere in Hawaii, in the Mauna Loa Observatory in Hawaii. And this was the era of all of the great the great scientists that we in the United States associate with both the Manhattan Project, for good or for ill, the Manhattan Project, and the space program. So there was a tremendous amount of scientific innovation and so on. So they were American scientists who began to realize what was going on as far as the climate is concerned. Although the United States, I don't think does nearly as well in responding to it nowadays. credit would go to a lot of U.S. Scientific ability, including Charles Keeling. Now, let me say a word or two about this graph, because this is a real fundamental piece. We're talking about the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And why is carbon dioxide important to talk about? It's because the carbon dioxide, the more of those little molecules that are in every million parts of stuff in the atmosphere, the more of those that are in there, the more we have what would be called a greenhouse effect. So we all know that we don't want to leave the dog or the cat in the car in the sun. And the reason for, even on a cold day, the reason for that is that the sun comes into the windows, and the infrared rays stay inside the car, heating it up. We all know that it could be snowing outside, but we get in the car on a sunny day and it feels warm. That's because of the greenhouse effect. You have a little greenhouse in the car, and if it's hot outside and you leave your pet in there, it could injure or kill a pet. So and heavens, you'd never want to leave a baby in a closed car. So that's the greenhouse effect. What's happening is that in principle is happening to the entire planet, is that sunlight is coming in and not as able to escape. And that is because of mostly carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, but also with methane and other greenhouse gases. And so is it possible for the atmosphere to sort of rebalance itself and correct itself? And the answer is yes. There is we know that through photosynthesis, that green plants actually take carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, and they basically, in their root systems and in the soil, they park it in the soil. It's sequestered there, as they say, so that every year. But what happens is that the plant life, especially if we're cutting down trees, the plant life becomes less and less able to do this. So let's look at this curve here. What is here is a zigzag, up, down, up, down, so on. Each year, each season, when the greenhouse or when the photosynthesis is surging, in other words, when the green plants are, because of the season, pulling carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, then it actually brings the CO2 level down a little bit. There's less of a greenhouse effect because of the action of the trees. The problem is that humans, remember that picture of the cars on the freeway, humans are putting the carbon dioxide into the atmosphere at a faster rate than it can be taken by natural processes out of the atmosphere. So what's happening is it's like throwing bricks on a pile. There are some bricks coming off of the pile, but mostly more are getting thrown onto the pile than coming off. And so our greenhouse gases are going up, 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 up. And that's why the temperature is going up and up. And it's not like, when we wake up and when we all buy electric cars and stop other kinds of activities, that this will go down right away. It's not going to go down right away. It's going to stay up there. So we are setting ourselves up. We're setting our children up for disastrous circumstance in the future. Any thoughts about that? Okay, that was your theologian giving a scientific explanation. You're going to need on this one, it says pre-industrial carbon dioxide levels. You want to look at the far right-hand side of that curve. This graph goes back 10,000 years, and you can see that the carbon dioxide a long time ago, 10,000 years ago, was fairly steady, and then all of a sudden we get into the 20th century, and boom, it goes right off the top. So we are loading, and this just continues to be the case, even though we're a lot of people, a lot of advanced societies and not advanced societies are very concerned about carbon dioxide. We're still stuck in a situation where we're absolutely releasing massive tons and tons and tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, exaggerating this greenhouse effect and raising the temperature of the planet, and that is having an effect on animal life. This is the Mauna Loa laboratory,
Observatory.
in Hawaii. Now, I'd like us to look at this too. What I'm going to show you a little graphic here that was developed by Ron Milo and from the Weizmann Institute of Science in Israel, and Rob Phillips from California Institute of Technology, published under the biomass distribution. I put this up there to say this is a pretty informative little piece of information, even though it may be off-putting at first. So let's talk about this. Over on the left-hand side is the square on the left-hand side represents the entire aggregate amount of living stuff in the world. Living stuff. It's mostly plants, but it's surprisingly, bacteria. 70 gigatons of bacteria, 450 gigatons of plants, everything from, little herbs and so on up to the great sequoias and so on. Now you can see down in the lower right-hand corner there, the gray area, the animals. So if you take the animals, then let's go over to the right-hand side. Now, what this represents is the status of things today. And so that these colored squares on the right-hand side represent the proportions of weight. We're looking at the whole of the animal kingdom now. And so like arthropods, are where am I here? These are, let's see, I'm confusing myself. Let's go up to the mollusks. All right, a mollusk are snails and slugs, mussels, octopi, octopuses. That's what a mollusk is. You wouldn't guess that there's so much of that. There's much more of that than there are humans, for example.
Mhm.
And then arthropods are insects. Well, there's a lot of insects. Much greater weight. And although interestingly enough, 40% of this insect species are declining now, and a third of all insects are endangered. So, I mean, we may feel that we're annoyed and by insects, by mosquitoes and so on, and wish they weren't around. But in fact, they're extremely important parts of the biosphere, the realm of life in the world. The total mass of the insects, the arthropods, is declining at 2.5% a year nowadays. Don't forget, these two squares represent the condition of circumstances here today. The cnidarians, these are jellyfish. Isn't it amazing how much of that there? Jellyfish, Portuguese men of war, sea anemones, and so on. The annelids are, where are the annelids? Up on the right-hand corner. Earthworms. How about that? Earthworms, leeches, 22,000 species, mostly in the soil. Soil is incredibly important. I mean, doing some of this work has indicated that, there's a lot that's going on in the soil that's extremely important, for the sustaining of life. Nematodes are roundworms, another kind of worm. So when you get the worms alone, you've got a big chunk of the action. Now look at where we're at with wild mammals.
Yeah.
Lions and tigers and bears and giraffes and horses and wild mammals is not so much. Elephants. Look at humans and look at livestock. That's the state of affairs right now. See, livestock, they weren't part of that group wasn't part of the picture. And now we have created, and the livestock, cattle, swine, chickens.
Chickens.
Barbara, you said what?
Chickens.
Yeah. Yeah. These very, very few species have managed to be, by human intervention, have succeeded massively. Okay. Last 5,000 years, this would embrace the whole of human history, since history's been recorded. Am I roughly right about that, Hal?
Yep.
Reduce the total Earth biomass by half. By half. I mean, that is, if you think about that, that's a stunning reality.
Mhm.
I see some of you writing this down. Don't forget, it's all going to be available to you. You can have this PowerPoint presentation. Everything is available. So if you don't need to take notes, if you're not going to miss anything. 96% of all mammal biomass are basically human bodies and our livestock. So this is what's happened into the animal world. We're going to look at what that consists of right now. But I want to get this in front of us. Anybody know what this creature is? It's a painting.
Like an oxen.
Someone said, did I hear
Is it
an
a
ox?
type of ox? Yeah.
Well, it's certainly related to an ox. It's
Is it a yak?
no.
A steer?
An emu?
An
No.
It's a long-horned steer.
It looks like a longhorn steer. Here it is in comparison with cattle that we have. This looks like the kind of bulls that they have in the bull ring.
Mhm.
This is an auroch.
Oh.
Aurochs are extinct. It was the auroch was the largest land mammal in Europe until 1674. And these must have been really fearsome creatures. I mean, big. I don't know if they were used for, I don't know if they were domesticated in any way, but they're extremely important because they're part of the ancestor chain of our modern day cattle and so on. But they were, by simple poaching and hunting, the aurochs were killed out. And the last one was in Poland, 1674. Was the first animal that humanity realized was going extinct. There was an extinction that happened that people marked, were realized, and it was the auroch. It was this really magnificent, probably terribly dangerous and interesting bovine, and it went extinct. Now, what they're doing, people are interested in this because it wasn't that long ago, and a lot of the genetic material for oryx exists in today's cattle. So there's some very creative people who are trying to crossbreed and bring oryx back into existence. But I mentioned the oryx to simply say that the rate of extinction has gotten to be much more rapid, so that you go to fish, it seems like there's an unlimited supply of fish. Not so. Commercial fish that are fished for food are down 85%. I imagine any commercial fisherman could tell you quite a story about the fish aren't there anymore. Scientists estimate that 150 to 200 species of something living, a plant, an insect, a bird, or a mammal, goes extinct every day.
Doug, isn't it true that, especially like in the rainforest and stuff, that there is possibly animal life, plant life that hasn't even been discovered yet, and it's being destroyed?
That's correct. That is correct. It sounds though like you know a little more about that than I do, but that's.
I taught zoology at a zoo. We
Okay.
taught zoology and conservation, especially.
Right. Yeah, I'll feel more comfortable when I'm in the theological area, but I want to talk about this. We need to look at the scientific stuff too, and so I'm making my way through that. 150 to 200, and this is 1,000 times the natural or background rate, and it's not the case that animals never go extinct. We know that the dinosaurs went extinct, and but the extinction that is occurring in the present, in the Anthropocene, is very dramatic. And this is a calamity that is greater than anything the world has experienced since the vanishing of the dinosaurs nearly 65 million years ago. And this data was garnered from this source. I mean, it's a big statement, and I wanted to just put what the source is. It's a little bit dated, 2010. It was carried in a popular magazine, The Guardian, but it was a UN environment program, and this is where this data is coming from. It's not coming off the top of my head, and it's not partisan. It's not. I don't deem it as partisan. So we have that citation. Now, let me see if I can make this happen. Hold your breath.
This is a giant industrial feedlot. And this is a drone. Hopefully we'll find a road where we're not visible. This might fly like anywhere, so you might want to back up like a lot. These are not farms. Those places barely exist anymore. Most animals used for food are raised on massive industrial facilities like these, holding thousands upon thousands of animals. They produce so much feces and urine that the waste is dumped into gigantic open pits like this one. The stench of these places can be smelled for miles around. These facilities also use massive amounts of resources, such as millions of pounds of government-subsidized grain and millions of gallons of water that is needed to grow that grain. And the animals who would normally graze on pasture find themselves standing on dirt lots hour after hour, day after day, month after month. Every one of us has the power to help stop these practices. It's time for all of us who care about the environment and who care about animals to stand up against this industry.
Now let's see if I can didn't anticipate this. Okay, stick with me. What I'm having trouble is advancing to the next slide. All right. Let's just quit there. And I don't think that we've forgotten anything. I've gone through most of that video. I'll stop this and go back so we can look at each other. All right, I'm going to ask a hard question. We have an idea. We have a snapshot of what's going on in the world with animals. What do you think God thinks of this?
I don't think he's very happy with what we're doing.
Not happy.
Mhm.
I think he probably thinks we are a very greedy
Mhm.
species.
Self-centered.
Well, many of us pray every day, give us this day our daily bread. But we want to have a pantry full.
I'm jotting down your answers. Keep talking.
I just want to say, as a kid, we raised cattle to feed our family in open fields. And nowadays, what we're doing to the cattle is just horrific. About a year ago, I gave up eating beef because I just couldn't live with myself knowing what these cattle are living through. You know, because as a kid, I realized they have feelings just as we do. You know, people don't realize that. They think they're stupid animals, but they aren't. And they don't deserve to be treated the way they are being treated, just to fill our bellies. And
Yeah, most of the stuff that's raised is, you know, they don't even have a life. They're in these small, you know, like the chickens are in these small coops.
right, and the pigs
The
can't
veal
even turn
doesn't even have
around.
anywhere to roam.
That's
Yeah.
right.
It's terrible.
And what about the farm raised fish that you get all the time now in the stores?
Yeah,
Their conditions can't be any
Yeah.
better.
Same problem.
And people don't
Boils
realize,
down to greed.
Well,
and people don't realize that the stuff they're being fed is also carcinogenic. It's all GMO food. It's full of pesticides. We're not only killing these animals, we're killing ourselves.
The amount of grain and other resources required to raise a pound of beef is way out of, out of balance. It's too much energy, too much material required to raise a pound of beef, whereas there are other things you can eat and have a lot less impact.
God did give us the dominion over all of these things, but I think it started with man. It's just kind of lost perspective on what is necessary for life.
Yeah, we've gotten too
So-
greedy.
Let's see. That sounded like Katie's voice. Am I right about that, Katie?
I think so.
Denial of
Let me go ahead. I'm switching something on my computer so I can see everybody.
denial
Katie,
the denial of root of all evil is a denial of the divine.
Right.
okay. Keep talking. I'm trying to capture as many of your comments and notes. Katie, you mentioned the idea of dominion. I didn't mean to cut you off in any way. Did you want to expand on that, or does anybody want to expand on anything? Go ahead.
Oh, you must have missed the rest of what I said. It was in fact that he didn't tell us that we were to abuse what we are to take care of. We're supposed to take care of it, not abuse it.
Okay. I'm writing that down.
The problem is what people define as abuse. Abuse in one way, to one person is abuse, and to another person it isn't. So it's hard to define that.
Well, the end result is what what counts.
Well, I think when you talk about abuse, you need to think about the abuse that humans do when we have fish that are in these little tiny bowls instead of swimming in the ocean. And what for? For our enjoyment, not even for food. What do we do with dogs? They're dressed up. They're in a baby buggy instead of actually walking and running around. I mean, that is abuse. I mean, it's not just things for food. It's just in general we've not taken care of creation.
And I think our use of food too has gone way beyond just nourishing our bodies. We overeat, we eat food that's basically garbage. And I remember reading not that long ago that Americans throw away more food than third world countries consume for nourishment.
Yeah, if you think back on when the settlers came to this country and they moved across heading west and absolutely slaughtered the bison and didn't use any of it, they just left the carcass. Whereas if we had settlers had come to this country and embraced the lifestyle of the natives that lived here, it would have been a better place.
Yeah. I think that's half of our problem. We haven't been taught,
Huge.
how to embrace animals and the good they have for us, even as food.
Did these, what I'm hearing is it sounds like most of you are, or all of the comments are focusing around the suffering of animals for this, and the suffering that is based on human overconsumption, greediness, and some of you have mentioned a misuse of the earth, I guess, like for farmland. This could be used for other things. So it sounds like all of you are pretty ethically astute on this. Even Anne's remark about pets, where you're seeing that you're sensitive to the fact that dogs and pets like fish are clearly their intended destiny is not realized in a small fishbowl, or even dogs being dressed up and used as entertainment, I guess. Have you gotten these values from your faith?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I do too.
Yeah, I mean, I think God guided me to that job that I was doing at the zoo. It was unique and everything, and it gave me a whole new understanding of things, and it didn't come out on I mean, I'm sure God guided me there. And I know, I ask him every day to do that, and I know that I believe in the end where it says the lion shall lie down with the lamb, that somehow this gets all resolved, but I think that we need to step in and do things.
So,
I know for a fact that, the rainforests of the world, which are our lungs, basically, they supply our breath that we breathe, and they're being destroyed so fast. And they're being destroyed because most of them exist in third world countries, and these people need the land to grow food on. But when
mhm.
they take away the trees and plant life that's naturally there, they can only grow on that land for a short period of time because all the nutrients are gone. So it's
We take a
it's a,
pause for Plant with Purpose right now.
pardon?
Yeah.
We pause for an advertisement for Plant with Purpose at the moment.
Yeah,
I would like to add something if you can hear me.
yes, of course, please do.
Okay. I think that God created us with free will, and that the human species is quite stubborn and want the comfortable way. And so we need to see all this degradation and discomfort to increase our awareness of how awful we are handling creation, and therefore we need to see this ugliness around us so that we can then correct it.
Thank you. So, taking a hard look, I was a little concerned that the first class was going to start off being excessively negative and so on, but you're thinking not so.
Oh no, absolutely not. We have to be shown much more of the ugliness so it penetrates to us. Like the other speaker said, we have to become aware of it, and that takes some time because we really do not want to see the mistakes we do. But I am confident that after lots more of being shown our wrongdoing and becoming aware of it, that then after this increased enormous chaos, then of course the light will vinker, or whatever they say that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome. I have to go. So.
We will, do we have your email?
I think so.
Okay, you've received the notifications from me.
I got it from Barbara.
Okay.
Yeah, hi, Monica. I forwarded it to her.
Monica, I'm very pleased you came. I'm thinking about making sure that before you leave, that we can stay in touch as far as giving you the sign-ons and the reminders and everything. And that goes for everyone. So thank you, Monica, for your thoughts and for being with us. And hopefully we'll see you in the other sessions next week when Hal talks. So other thoughts? What else is going through your heads?
Would you like a very brief preview of what I'm going to do next week?
Would love it.
I'm going to discuss the Paleolithic and the dawn of human consciousness, which includes the dawn of religion and the emergence of modern human consciousness, which occurs around 40,000 years ago, maybe a little earlier as they discover new sites. Modern human consciousness and emerging out of our animal nature, and we're still animals, but we also have become something very, very unique. And so I want to go through human evolution and the breakthrough, the dawn of consciousness, and with it, as soon as we reach that point, we have religious beliefs, and to me, it's a very impressive phenomena. As soon as we become what scientists call anatomically modern human beings, we have religious beliefs. So I'm going to go through the evidence for all of this. And as an anthropologist, I've taught human evolution all my professional life. And at Eckerd College, where I taught for 22 years, I always prefaced my remarks to my students saying, I did not think that the scientific evidence for human biological evolution out of earlier ape-like forms constituted any kind of disproof of our religious faith. It doesn't conform very well to the Genesis version, but my feeling is that whatever science discovers, that's the way God does it. That's the way God does it. So instead of creating human beings like with a snap of the fingers, he took, a very long time to do it. And the processes, each of the processes are also miracles in themselves, but it's just not a snap of the fingers type thing. It's a long running thing. So that's going to be, so I'm going to end up with next week with the exploration of what human consciousness entails when we reach that point. And we have not liberated ourselves from our animal nature completely. We're still chained to it, which has a lot to do with why we're destroying the environment, because we still have to feed ourselves. And so so it leads to all kinds of abuses. And I'm very empathetic with those of you who grew up on a farm. I spent half of my childhood on a dairy farm, and we love our cows and everything. The thought of industrialized dairy farms, it is so appalling. It is so cruel to those animals. So anyway, well, I'll see you next week for all of this.
This is great.
Thank
We're
you.
moving right up on the end of our hour, and we'll be able to quit in a timely way. My question to you, what does God think of this, is really the answer to that question, I think, will come in all of the subsequent classes, and we'll be able to elaborate on that at great depth. It sounds like you're really ready for that conversation. Again, I like when there's lots of participation.